Abu Toha is an award-winning poet and author. He has a new book of poetry out. It's called Forest of Noise. Your descriptions now make me think of your little son. You came with your 3 children yesterday. Can you read the poem about your son and your daughter?
Yeah, sure. So, by the way, this poem was written after May 2021 attacks. So my son Yazan was about 5 years old. My daughter Yafa was 4 years old. And this is about them.
Now, this is very important because you just said this is written in May 2021.
Yes.
Half your poems in Forest of Noise are before last October 7th.
Yeah.
And the other half after.
Well, I mean, this tells you and others a lot of things. So this poem could be written today. And if it was written today, there are so many things that would not be present here, because this current genocide is so different from any other wars that Israel launched against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. My son throws a blanket over my daughter. Gaza, May 2021. At night, at home, we sit on the floor, close to each other, far from the windows and the red lights of bombs. Our backs bang on the walls whenever the house shakes. We stare at each other's faces, scared yet happy that so far our lives have been spared. The walls wake up from their fitful sleep, no arms to wipe at their blurry eyes. Flies gather around the only lit ceiling lamp for warmth in the bitter night, cold except when missiles hit and burn up houses and roads and the trees. The neighborhood next to us, where Yazan learned to ride his bike, scorched. Every time we hear a bomb falling from an F-16 or an F-35, our lives panic. Our lives freeze somewhere in between, confused where to head next. A graveyard, a hospital, a nightmare. I keep my shivering hand on my wristwatch, ready to remove the battery if needed. My 4-year-old daughter Yafa, wearing a pink dress given to her by a friend, hears a bomb explode. She gasps, covers her mouth with her dress's ruffles. Yazan, her 5.5-year-old brother, grabs a blanket worn by his sleepy body. He lays the blanket on his sister. "You can hide now," he assures her. And I have a video of that. It's on my phone. I took a video of my son throwing a blanket. That's how I couldn't forget this moment.
Now, your kids know the hospitals in Gaza that we were just describing. Yeah. Tell us, to humanize Kamal Adwan Hospital, Al-Auda Hospital.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, Al-Auda Hospital, so Kamal Adwan is run by the Gaza Health Ministry. The Al-Auda Hospital is run by the Palestinian Red Crescent, which is an NGO. And the Al-Auda Hospital is dedicated mainly to the people who cannot afford to pay health insurance, and many of the pregnant mothers who go to UNRWA clinics are referred to Al-Auda Hospital to give birth there for free. So it's a hospital not only for the patient, but also for the pregnant women to give birth. My sister Aya, 35 years old, is pregnant and she's about to give birth, and there is no hospital close to her, so I don't know what she's going to do. Kamal Adwan Hospital is the main hospital in Beit Lahia and also in Beit Lahia project. And in the past few years, it was turned into a children's hospital. And I used to take Yafa and Yazan to that hospital when they feel sick, when they have fever, when they are injured. And I have many friends who used to work as nurses there. And I know Dr. Hassam Abu Safiya, who is the head of the Kamal Adwan Hospital right now, who we watched just a few minutes ago. I mean, he's very helpless. I mean, I use this in my language. I say that the situation in North Gaza, in Beit Lahia, North, is catastrophic. I mean, how many times did I use the same word? I mean, sometimes I want to stop writing because I'm repeating the same word, even though the situation is worse. So, I mean, the language is helpless. I mean, I use the same vocabulary after October 7th to describe the situation in North Gaza, in Beit Lahia. I said we had no water, no food. That was October 12th. And now we are October 25th. 2024. So a year. I mean, does theory language help us? Why does the world make us feel, helpless? I think, I don't like this as a human being. We have never stopped shouting and screaming and showing our pictures and videos.
So what happens is that the government doesn't care. Now, we have government representatives that are making money off exactly what's happening because they won't stand up and shut it down. The Biden administration was working on a ceasefire for the last 10 months. Now, you know, government's incompetent sometimes. Well, this is truly incompetent, and it's criminal on both parties, Republican and Democrat. If you don't like what you see and you don't trust your politicians, then vote them out, all of them, Republican or Democrat.
Who may not have seen you on Democracy Now! First, soon after October 7th, we talked to you in Gaza. We then talked to you, or spoke to others about you when you were taken by the Israeli military. Then when you were released and made it with your family to Cairo, we spoke to you. Yeah. We spoke to you in South Africa, and now you have come to the United States. But take us on that journey, how you got out, and remind us what happened when you were separated from your family and taken by the Israeli military.
So, Emmy, that interview that you did with me, it was October 12th. I can't forget the date because that was the last day I was in my house. I just finished my interview with you on October 12th. I think it was 3 p.m., which is 8 morning. Yeah, I even didn't pay attention to the time.
New York time.
Yeah, I mean, by the time I finished my interview with you, I went down. My father and mother, and my brother Hamza and his children and his pregnant wife, my brother Muhammad and his wife, my sister Aya with her children who is now pregnant, my sister Saja and my sister Sundu. So about 25 people were in the house with me. So I went down and I found my father and my mother packing their bags. And when I talk about bags, I talk about children's school bags. We don't have suitcases, by the way, which is something that many people don't understand why. Because we don't have airports. We don't need suitcases. We travel with our backpacks. My children's kindergarten backpack, I stuff it with some clothes and I put some water bottle there. So I found my parents packing their bags. I asked him, where are you going? And they said, the Israelis just dropped some leaflets ordering the residents of Beit Lahi, about 90,000 people, to evacuate. And that was the first time I found my parents, leaving. And then I went upstairs. I didn't know what to take with me. I only took with me the only copy that I had of my first poetry book. And I took a bottle of water and some clothes for my children. And then we went to the refugee camp. And where we stayed? We stayed in the same neighborhood that was bombed yesterday, where 150 people were killed. And I just told you about the names of the people who were killed, including Fathi, who I now remember that we got 1 hour of water from the tap when we were in the camp. And Fathi would tell the neighbors, the water is on, fill your buckets. So I remember her. And then when the bombing got intense in the refugee camp, we thought of going to an UNRWA school, which is just a few hundred meters away from the neighborhood in the camp. So we stayed in a school shelter in Jabalia, which was later raided by the Israeli army. And by the way, a few days ago, the Israelis again visited that school, took the men out, and they have abducted so many, including my wife's sister husband. He's a brother-in-law to me. So they took him, and one reason he stayed in the school, he's a nurse. He couldn't leave the refugees in the school without any nursing person. So he was abducted, and he's left with 3 children. The youngest was born after October 7th. So when the bombing got intense, I had to leave the school with my wife and kids, especially because we had the chance to leave Gaza for Egypt. And on the Salah ad-Din street, which was described by the Israelis as a safe passage, I was abducted by the Israeli soldiers. I was handcuffed and blindfolded, and before that I had to remove all my clothes. I was naked for the first time in my life. And under gunpoint, 2 Israeli soldiers were pointing their guns at me and the person next to me. And then we were taken to a place we didn't know. I mean, for me, as a Palestinian who was born in Gaza, I'd never been to Palestine, which is now Israel. So that was the first time for me to sleep in my country. As a detainee, as someone who was blindfolded and handcuffed, as someone who didn't know whether his wife and children, who he left behind, were still breathing. Just imagine, not only was I taken blindfolded and handcuffed and beaten and harassed and insulted. They kept saying bad words in Arabic to us. These are the only words they know in Arabic, insulting words. But also, I did not know whether my wife and kids, from whom I was separated, were still breathing, whether they went to a place that is safe, because there is no place that is safe. Why? Because when there is occupation, there is nothing that's called a safe place. And I had also to worry about my mother and father, who I left behind in the refugee camp, and my siblings and their children. I mean, I was torn into 100 pieces, thinking about myself. Why are they taking me? Where are they taking me? And I heard some young men screaming. You know, some of them had to be separated from their pregnant wives. So after 3 days, I was released. I was dropped at the same checkpoint.
But there was international outcry
Exactly.
over you having been taken.
As Mus'ab Abu Toha, not as a Palestinian. So I think many people cared about me because I am a friend and a writer, but they did not maybe consider maybe doing the same thing with other people. It's easy to get someone out than getting a whole population from under the military fist of the Israeli army. I mean, I just imagine if I was not a writer, if I was not a poet, if I did not have a publisher, if I did not have some journals and magazine that I wrote for. Just imagine no one knew about me. I would still have been under the Israeli custody. Maybe I could have died, just like Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, who was taken from Al-Auda hospital, by the way, in November last year, and he was announced dead last October. He was the best surgeon in the Gaza Strip, and he died. He was killed.
I wanted to ask you about another man, another poet, but he didn't make it. The Palestinian poet, the Islamic University professor, someone you knew, Rafat Al-Harir. Last on Democracy Now!, October 10th, 2023. Rafat was killed by an Israeli strike in December, along with his brother, sister, and 4 of his nieces. This is Scottish actor Brian Cox reciting Rafat Al-Harir's poem, If I Must Die, and then I want you to share your poem, a sort of segue to Rafat's If I Must Die, a video that went viral.
If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Scottish actor Brian Cox, who played in Succession, reciting Rafat Al-Harir's poem, If I Must Die, in a video that went viral. And you can go to democracynow.org to see our interview with Rafat just before he was killed. In your book, Mus'ab Abu Toha, Forest of Noise, talk about Rafat and then your kind of rejoinder to this poem.
I knew Rafat as a professor at the Islamic University of Gaza. He did not teach me, but I would say that he taught me a lot. Because when I was in my second year, he was in Malaysia finishing his PhD. And when he returned, I was already finishing my courses. But he was someone who led me to the We Are Not Numbers project that he co-founded, which is a project that offer some mentorship for young writers. I was in the beginning of my writing career. So he introduced me to the group, and that is a picture that I took with the strawberries.
We're showing an image of Rafat holding strawberries.
Yeah, we picked that same strawberry together in Beit Leia, in my father-in-law's farm, my father-in-law's farm. I knew Rafat as a father. He was a wonderful father for his kids, and he was a lovely son of his parents. His parents still survive, I hope, in Gaza City. And he's also a professor of English literature. And we talk when we were talking about literature, he would talk about Arabic literature and also English literature. His favorite poet, I think, was John Donne. And in the Arabic language, he loved the classical Arabic poems like Al-Asha, like Imru al-Qais, like Ibn Halliza. He would recite some Arabic poems to me, and I was amazed, you know. Before Irfat was killed, he published his poem, If I Must Die, and he posted it on his Instagram. And I read that poem, and I was still in North Gaza. It was before I was abducted. And it was very heartbreaking for me. I mean, someone writing about his death and what he wishes his death to be like. And I couldn't but try and write my own If I Must Die. But I did not call it If I Must Die. I wrote If I'm Going to Die. But after he was killed, I retitled the poem, which is now called A Request. A request after Rifat al-Arair. If I am going to die, let it be a clean death. No rubble over my corpse, no broken dishes or glasses, and not many cuts in my head or chest. Leave my ironed, untouched jackets and pants in the closet, so I may wear some of them again at my funeral. Yeah.
Masad Abu Toha reading from his new second book of poetry, Forest of Noise.
And we can't get a ceasefire? You've got to be kidding me, folks. And you're going to vote for these crooks, these Beltway bandits. All they do is steal, cheat, and kill. Just look at the average American struggling to get by when, according to the government 2 years ago, $79,000 to $80,500 was called a livable wage. And we're waging wars around the world, spending trillions on the war machine while we're standing on the edge of the cliff of the precipice of death and destruction if it turns full nuclear. And you're sitting here, standing here, waiting or putting your vote together, and you're voting for a Republican or a Democrat. And I say, do yourself a favor, shoot yourself in the head with consciousness and say no more. Say no more to the greed machine that goes around and rapes and pillages the world, that kills innocent babies and families. Say no to the crooks in Congress and vote them out. 93% have been taking money from a foreign agent called the Zionist machine, the worst ruthless killing machine in the history of the world. And its roots go way back, folks. This is the Conscious Hour. It's our time to wake up. It's our time to speak out, and it's our time to vote all of the Beltway bandits out, Republicans and Democrats. They've disgraced us. They've ripped us off. They've cheated us of our ability to live under a true government that represents the people, not the killing machine. Conscious Hour. Wake up, folks.